All right, so let's go north of our border to what happened today in Harare. Zimbabwe's movement for democratic change, the opposition, is saying that conditions in Zimbabwe have worsened since President Emmerson Mnangagwa took over from Robert Mugabe. This after riot police in the capital used tear gas and batons to disperse hundreds of anti-government protesters earlier today. The violence took place after the opposition MDC failed in its attempt to overturn a police ban on the planned demonstration. The protest was meant to be the first in a series that will be held across the country.
The regime of Emmerson Mnangagwa does not respect people's rights, does not respect the constitution of Zimbabwe, and there's nothing new about the new dispensation except fascism and authoritarianism. As lawyers, we are totally unhappy with the judgment. As MDC, we will proceed with our marches in Masvingo, in Bulawayo, in Gweru, in Mutare, that are due and set down for next week. As of today, we'll sit back and watch the police who have cordoned off the entirety of Harare do the demonstration themselves. But unfortunately, there's no right to demonstrate on behalf of the police in the Constitution of Zimbabwe.
All right, to discuss, we're joined by Zimbabwe analyst Dr. Pedzisai Ruhanya. He's also a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Johannesburg. Thank you for being with us, Doctor. Just how would you explain what happened today, looking at those scenes in Harare?
There are three things that viewers need to understand. Firstly, the brutal attack against the unarmed civilians, peaceful protesters, who were lawfully protesting, who were orderly, who were not disturbing peace, is purely unacceptable. And there was no need for the police to behave in the manner that they behaved, in an extrajudicial manner, in an extra-legal manner, without respecting the fundamental civil and political liberties of citizens. And secondly, we have a problem of impunity by state security agents, where they are emboldened by the view that each time they abuse human rights, each time they attack citizens, there is no accountability, there is impunity. I would give you an example. In 1 August 2018, there was a disturbance. There were disturbances following the election, and the former president of South Africa, Mohlandi, came to head a commission. In his commission, he recommended that the military personnel, the police who were involved in the killing of 6 unarmed civilians, should be tried, should be held accountable. These people have not been tried. So these people are emboldened in the view that each time they abuse human rights, they are not accountable.
They haven't been tried. Has there been any arrests, any charges? I remember those terrible protests.
No, there have not been arrests, there have not been investigations, there have been nothing. But you see... Not even a
probe, you
Not said. Even a probe, but Zimbabwe has a history of impunity, dating back to the Gukurahundi problem in the 1980s, where over 20,000 ethnic Ndeveles were massacred by this same very establishment, and with the President Mnangagwa as Minister of State Security. So there's a history of impunity and accountability and no recourse to the justice system in Zimbabwe, which in my view is broken. And thirdly, and most importantly, is that Mnangagwa's administration since the fall of Mugabe is not addressing the fundamental problem. What you see, the protest, unemployment, lack of electricity, lack of jobs, lack of water, are symptoms of a deeper governance and legitimate crisis coming from disputed elections since 2000.
Yeah.
That is at the core of the Zimbabwe problem that the Mnangagwa regime is evading.
Let's just start with today. We'll come back to today. Does the MDC, the opposition, bear any responsibility here? Because the court did affirm the ban on the protests. They didn't call it off.
The court did not ban the protest. The court said the case was not urgent. But even in the event that the case was not urgent, as said by the court, the Constitution of the Republic of Zimbabwe, Section 59, allows Zimbabweans, in terms of the Bill of Rights, the right to protest, the right to assembly, the right to freedom of election. These are fundamental civil and political liberties that are accustomed to what we call constitutional democracy. Zimbabwe cannot purport to be a constitutional democracy that does not respect the civil and political liberties of its citizens.
Why aren't the courts seeing that as urgent and saying the protest is today? We have to look at the merits, at least, of the case.
What you need to understand is that Zimbabwe is a competitive authoritarian regime. In competitive authoritarian regimes, they set up a whole range of democratic institutions. They will have a judiciary, they will have a legislature, and they will have an executive. But these institutions are manipulated in such a manner that they will become impotent, they become dysfunctional. And there are 4 areas of contestation in competitive authoritarian regimes. There is contestation over the electoral field, contestation in the legislature, contestation in the judiciary. So the judiciary is pegged, the judiciary is manipulated. So when you go to the court,
so are there independent judges, in your opinion, in Zimbabwe?
It's doubtful. You would have 1 or 2, but generally the system is rotten. The system is rotten, it is captured, and it is manipulated.
And Amnesty International certainly agrees with you, saying that police officers were brutal today against peaceful protesters. Is there enough evidence that they were peaceful, there was no provocation of police? Is this police just going mad for no reason?
If you look at the footage, you will see that the citizens lawfully assembled, and they were sitting down. They were seated. I was watching what was happening in Harare. They were seated. They were not provoking anyone. They were not disorderly. They were not malicious. So they were attacked. But you also need to understand, there is a Minister of Defense called Victor Matema Danda. And there is a Deputy Minister of Information called, I've forgotten his name, right? Deputy Minister of Information. Yeah. They actually warned the protesters that if you go to protest, you will be attacked, you will be violated, and nothing will happen. If you go to the Facebook of the Deputy Minister of Information, they were threatening violence. The ZANU-PF Secretary for the Youth League, Togarepi, also issued those threats. So when these things happen, for us, it's not a surprise. Yeah. For Zimbabwe, it's not a surprise. Because they forewarned violence.
This is fascinating because in South Africa, of course, we're looking at Marikana, where instructions were given, excessive force was used. So you're saying that is what's happening. Instructions are given to police to be brutal or to use force.
There is ample evidence in the history of Zimbabwe. I've talked about the 20,000 who died in the 1980s. In the Material massacres, what is popularly known as Gukura Hundi. But not only that, if you look at the 2000 election and also the land reform program, or what is popularly known as the land invasions, people were killed extrajudicially, people were killed extra-legally, and no single person has been held to account. Yeah. So there's a history of impunity and accountability, which the international community, which SADC and the AU must call the Zimbabwe authorities to order.
Considering what happened in August last year, which shocked the world, are things getting worse? Is that impunity getting worse amongst police officers?
Of course. They have not been held accountable. They are not held accountable. That's why they continue. This cycle of violence, the spiral of violence, is a result of impunity and accountability and the breakdown of the rule of law. There's no rule of law in Zimbabwe. You cannot have rule of law where there are judicial executions, where there are extrajudicial killings, extra-legal killings, and people are not brought before the justice system.
And Emmerson Mnangagwa, you say, is doing nothing to stop it, in fact, actively encouraging it.
Yes, he does actively encourage it. When he met the AU team that is in Harare, he said that if the protesters are going to be violent, they will be they will meet the full wrath of the law. But the protesters were not violent, and we do not have a history of civil society or the opposition being violent. What we have is state-organized, state-sanctioned violence in Zimbabwe.
When he came in, there was a lot of talk of his involvement in what happened in the 80s and questions whether he had changed or not. He certainly seemed very open to global investors. Surely he knows the implications of scenes like this when you're trying to say we want to get the economy kick-started. I mean, this would be self-defeating.
Mnangagwa doesn't know the implications of what he's doing because he doesn't appear to be someone who is repenting, someone who is living his past history. He's emboldened in the view that he is not accountable. The international community is not calling him to order, is not calling the system to order. In fact, it is interesting. Mugabe is now appearing like an angel. Mugabe is appearing like an angel from what Mnangagwa is doing. We had 1 August where unarmed civilians were killed. We had January 2019, this year, where protesters, 19 of them died, nobody was brought to book. So Mnangagwa is a very deceptive character. What he says and what he does are two different things. He says he is a new dispensation. With respect, it's a new deception, not a new dispensation.
Will other protests go ahead? What do you think will happen next? Are people in Zimbabwe scared?
People in Zimbabwe are not scared just like people here in South Africa. Zimbabwe, South Africa are born out of struggle. Our country came through years of brutalization. When they believe that what they are doing is in the interest of the country, they are respecting the rule of law, they are peaceful, they will not stop peaceful, lawful, democratic, constitutional protests in order to redeem the country, to return the country to democratic legitimacy. It will not stop until Mnangagwa addresses the fundamental problem, which is the problem of legitimacy and governance.
And another fundamental problem here is the economy. People are desperate. Just tell us your understanding of how bad it is right now.
It is bad. It is very bad. I cannot describe what is happening, but we have over 90% unemployment. 18 hours without electricity.
So very few people are waking up and going to work.
Yeah, that's why you see massive demonstrations during the week. Today is Friday. People are supposed to be at work, but they went the streets because there are no jobs. There's no foreign direct investment. There is massive corruption. If you open state newspapers, the Herald, the Chronicle, you hear a story about looting. And the people who loot, the people who are corrupt, are from the administration of Mnangagwa, from the ruling ZANU-PF party. So there is corruption in the decomposition of the political, which needs to be addressed.
A huge issue recently has been the power problem, and we eventually got paid as South Africa. There was a payment to Eskom, and officials even telling us that they're on top of this. This is going to change, and at least once the power starts flowing, things could get better. Is there hope?
No, there is no hope, because what you see, the problems that you see in the power, in the electricity sector, like I said, these are manifestations of a big road, and the big road is the political, the corruption of the political, the decomposition of the political. So to address the Zimbabwe problem and to stop these manifestations in the economy, the Zimbabwe governance and legitimacy crisis coming out of disputed elections. You see, we have a party-state confliction, party-state military complex, where patronage, clientelism, and predatory networks operate in the economy. And people do not have confidence. People do not have trust. People do not have confidence in the economy, in the banking system, and in those who govern the state.
And do people have enough confidence in the MDC? What you're saying is basically there's no hope unless there's a change in government, actually.
Yeah, of course. You would remember that in 2008. Is the
opposition gaining strength? There's a divided history. Where is it going? If
elections in Zimbabwe were run in the manner elections are run here in South Africa, I can state without doubt that the MDC would have been in power. You do remember in 2008, Mugabe lost the first presidential election, they lost parliament, they lost all local government elections. And even as we speak, out of 32 urban municipal elections, they lost the 28 out of 32 in the urban areas where people know what they do. So that the MDC is a popular political movement in the country is without doubt. The evidence is there.
All right, thank you for your analysis tonight. That was UJ postdoctoral researcher Dr. Pedzisai Ruhanya, and also giving us analysis on the situation and those very chaotic scenes in Harare today.